Hello again. I irritated some people this morning by talking of a way that the educational achievement gap between black children and white could be reduced or even eliminated. I did not say that this should be done, but that it could be if we put our minds to it. Some people raised a very good point that what I was talking about would mean putting a huge amount of effort into focusing only on black families and ignoring white ones. This, they said, would be unjust. These people are, of course, quite right. What we are faced with is choosing the lesser of two evils. First, it is quite true that working class white pupils are falling behind badly in the British educational system. And this is a very bad thing. Nobody denies that. In the description to this video, I give a link to the House of Commons Select Committee report on this problem, and pretty grim reading it makes too. Nobody denies that white working class pupils, especially boys, are lagging badly behind now. Surely then, any effort at helping children achieve their full educational potential should focus on all children, regardless of race. Why was I talking about giving all this attention to black families? This is what I meant when I talked just now of choosing the lesser of two evils. One of the evils which we face is that black people in Britain are responsible for a disproportionate amount of crime and other undesirable things. They take up a disproportionate amount of the time of social services. They tend to live in poorer conditions than white people. Their health is worse, so they take up more NHS time. A very large proportion of the British prison population consists of black people. This is just to mention a few things. This is a problem not just for black people but for society as a whole, because many areas where there are a lot of black people are plagued with disorder and crime, and it spreads out. The people committing it, usually young black men, go on day trips to various places and they export their disorder to those places. It's a problem for everybody. I think that dealing with it would be a good idea. Since much of the problem is caused by the fact that black children do not thrive educationally and tend often to reject mainstream education and values, then the remedy probably entails focusing support and remedial work there, in the black community, starting from birth and in an expensive program which spans generations. By raising their educational attainment, we would automatically start getting rid of those bad things which I've just mentioned. So this would be tackling one problem in society, reducing the achievement gap between black people and white. It's a desirable end for all of us because, of course, those carrying out muggings, fighting with knives and so on have invariably failed academically at school. They are a very visible sign of what the achievement gap in education between black and white produces. Why should we focus such work only on black people, though? Why not everybody? Why don't we try and raise educational attainment generally across the whole country for black children and white and Chinese and Indians too? The answer is that such a project might be very worthy, but it would not get rid of the educational achievement gap between black people and white. When programs of this sort are directed at children of all ethnicities, they certainly benefit black children. However, the attainment of the white children and those of Asian heritage rise also and at a higher rate than the black children. The gap, therefore, remains, with black children still lagging behind other groups. Whatever is done, the attainment gap stubbornly refuses to go away. This is freely acknowledged by black educationalists as well as white. Initiatives such as the American No Child Left Behind Act 2001 do not appear to eradicate the achievement gap between black children and white. They raise educational attainment all round. I give a reference in the description to this video to an academic piece by some black researchers in America published 10 years ago, in which they observe this and they give a detailed account of their own explanation. But the fact remains that when you have an educational program or something designed for early years stimulation and it's delivered all over to everybody, black children still lag behind. This then is the choice of which I spoke, the one of choosing one of two evils. On the one hand, we could start a massive program aimed at raising the educational standards of all children in the country, regardless of ethnicity. This would have the effect, of course, of raising white working class attainment, but it would also raise everybody else's, including that of Chinese and black children. As in America, following No Child Left Behind, you would then still be left with the achievement gap between black and white, with all the consequent problems for our society which that brings about. And trust me, it affects all of us adversely. Or on the other hand, you could target such a campaign at black families and children, and so raise their educational standards, which would have a real chance of closing the gap between them and white children. Unfortunately, these two aims are mutually exclusive. You can do one or the other, but not both. Personally, I regard the problems currently being caused to society by the divisions between black and white as catastrophic and likely to lead to serious disorder in the future. It seems to me that tackling this crisis is, or should be, a real priority, for black underachievement is liable to cause us even worse problems in the future. The scheme I talked about earlier today would be one way to head it off. I agree, though, it would be unjust to other groups. Just to remind viewers why it is in everybody's interests to reduce that attainment gap, the black people in prison, those carrying out muggings, dealing in drugs, using guns and so on, are all the product of the educational achievement gap. They have failed at school and so turned to an alternative lifestyle which is bad for them and shockingly bad for society as a whole. I think it would be worth making an effort to prevent this and put an end to that gap.